All right, I'm back in the van. If you guys get bored of me, just crawl up in here and take a nap. So, I was working the 3 to 11 shift. And by about 7:30, if you didn't have whatever was supposed to be in the paper, it would take an act of God to get that, whatever you did after that, into the paper. Like a UFO landing on City Hall. That might make it after about 8 o'clock. Nothing else. So call comes in, hostage situation, hostages. Now, you might think to yourself, that's bad. Hostages sound terrible, but not when you work for a news organization. When you work for a news organization, they hear hostages and they see front page, man, this is the best thing that could possibly happen, but it's already 8 o'clock. So I'm an intern, I'm clueless, I don't know what's happening. So I am at the mercy of my fellow photographers. Sorry, I got a cuff issue. I'm at the mercy of my fellow photographers who basically sabotage me. They go, oh, Milner, this is great for you. It's a hostage situation. You get to go. So they're probably off eating enchilada dinner somewhere, and I'm in a hostage situation. In addition, that's step one of the sabotage. Step two of the sabotage is one of the older photographers says to me, oh, you're going to a hostage situation? You got to take the 300 f2. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I didn't say 300 2.8, the 300 2.8 is a majestic beast of lenses when it comes to photography. Everybody wants a 300 2.8. You can hand hold a 300 2.8. You can hand hold a 300 2.8 and then let it drop on a shoulder strap and it still works. The 300 f2 is a whole nother beast. The front element on a 300 f2, Nikkor at the time, it's the size of a 50-gallon drum. It's like a dinner plate. It's huge. And the amount of glass in that lens must weigh 35 pounds. Now, the other photographer, the older guy that told me to take the 300 f2, that was not a helpful recommendation. That was, I'm sabotaging you even more because now you're going to get stuck holding that lens, which is going to be useless because at a hostage situation, they're never going to let you close enough to use a 300. And you're going to be stuck holding it. It's on a monopod. And you're going to be trying to hold a 300 f2 on a monopod while you're shooting with the other lens. You're going to screw it up, and then when you get back to the paper, you're going to get your ass chewed out. You might think this is the worst part of the story, but it gets better. I get to the hostage situation, and there's two cop reporters there. There's two beats. There's the legend of the newsroom, a guy that I loved who was like an old shoe, chain smoking nonstop, eating fried food every day. I loved this guy. And then his young cub reporter, who was a young female reporter, tenacious, wanted to take the realm from the old guy. They were both covering the scene. I tried to get them to hold my lens, and they looked at me like, you're an idiot. You fell for that 300 f2 thing. You're stuck holding it. Then the PIO shows up, Public Information Officer, and he looks at us journalists there, and he goes, whatever you do, I don't care what you do. I don't care if you get in the middle of the hostage situation. I don't care if you take a stray round. Whatever you do, do not cross this police tape. And they had strung up yellow police tape, right? We've all seen it. Strung it up. Whatever you do, you cross this police tape, you are dead. I will personally hunt you down, gut you, skin you, and make a pencil box out of your shin bone. So I'm standing there and I'm like, no problem. I'm not crossing that tape. Whatever I do, all I know is I'm stuck holding this lens. I'm never going to make a picture. I'm going to be out here all night and no one's going to use these and I'm an idiot. A cop goes underneath the police tape. And he catches it on the back of his collar. And as he's walking away, I can see the police tape being pulled behind him. And it's building tension and tension and tension. And it finally snaps loose and it comes flying back. And it hits me smack dab in the middle of the face so hard that it smacks me and then pops over behind my head, making it appear as if Uncle Dano decided, in defiance of the PIO and the entire police department, that he went under the police tape. Just in time for the same guy who told me not to go under the police tape to turn around and see me under the police tape. So in front of the entire community, the entire journalism community, all the looky-loos, the spectators, everyone else, he chews my ass out. That was the worst part of the night. Unless you were the guy that took the hostages because they shot him. Okay, remember when I did the first deer photographer film and I said that not a single person had asked me to do it? I think there's even less people who asked me to do the second version. But after I did the first version, I realized there was all the stuff that I left out. And for you haters out there who are saying, you're just pointing a finger, you're old, you're disgruntled, you're saying all this stuff. Remember what I said in the first film. All of these mistakes, almost all of them, I have made personally, many of them more than once. So I am owning every single thing that I'm going to tell you about, with a few, very few exceptions. I have another 10 or 11 pointers that I want to point out to photographers, some of which I cannot believe I have to say. I called other people that I trust and I said, I'm going to say this. Do I have to say this? And they said, absolutely you have to say this because people are still doing this stuff. And so I'm as much to blame as anybody else. So don't ever let me off the hook if I point a finger and say, look, photographers, you should do this. So the idea behind this was 10 pieces of advice I wish people had told me, 10 things I wish I hadn't done, 10 things I wish I hadn't done more than once, and celebrated and owned them like an idiot, but now I'm back and I hope that this is helpful. Number one, got a little scenario for you. Let's say that you're out there and you're one of these photographers that's like, I want to talk to them CEO types. I want a CEO on my Rolodex, right? And so you send that CEO, you reach out through the digital grapevine and you send him your Instagram handle. Wow. Okay, so that CEO, he's going to see that Instagram handle and he's going to go, damn, son, you're on Instagram. That's amazing. Why don't you come into the office and we'll talk about it? And then you get to that office and that CEO is going to turn you around and he is going to kick you in the butt because he's not on Instagram. CEOs don't leave digital trails. They leave paper trails. Phone calls, emails at the most. You've got to have, this is point number one in case you're lost here in my ramble. You've got to have a phone number and an email on your contact page. If you only have an Instagram handle, you look like a clown. The reason I'm telling you this is because yet again, I ended up in a meeting where a client was saying, this is a photographer we're considering working with. And when they went to that contact page, they had an Instagram handle only. And the client looked at me and said, is this person for real? And I said, no, because they don't have basic contact information on their site. You cannot only have an Instagram handle. It makes you look like a clown that spends all day online. These people need a phone number. The client's going to need a phone number. The art director is going to need a phone number. Everyone involved in the production is going to want a phone number and an email. It does not happen through communication on Instagram. And if it is, it tells you the level of client that you're working with. You have to have a complete ecosystem of contact information. Otherwise, you look like a total amateur. It's not to say that Instagram won't become part of that process. In fact, it could be the end result of everything that you're doing in that shoot, but you've got to be a professional. If you are afraid to give someone a telephone number, they do not want to work with you. Again, I had this conversation yesterday. I reached out to another photographer and I said, look, are you still running into people that only have IG handles on their contact? And he said, yes, and I can't repeat what they said, but it was not flattering. If flattering was here, what they said was down here. It doesn't take a lot of work, people. This is basic. Hell, son, you might even get a landline. Imagine that. Beep, 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 beep. How about the dial phone? Get a dial phone and own it. Point number two. Someone asked me the other day about professional photographers over 65 years old. And I said, I don't know many people over 65 who are still working as photographers. However, I know plenty of people over 65 who are living unbelievable lives, great lives, because they have an archive and they're living off of their archive. Their image sales, their licensing, their gallery shows. I know some people who are traveling around the world nonstop, being supported and paid by exhibitions and galleries and museums for showing off what they have in their archive. I run into a lot of photographers who are of the younger demographic who don't think that having an archive and owning the content in your archive, owning the rights to it outright, not doing work for hire, not giving away bad contracts, not giving buyouts, all of those dumb things that make it impossible to make a living. You've got to own the content in your archive and you have to understand the concept of licensing, which this is where a client comes and licenses images from you based on usage. Where is it going to run? How long is it going to run? What kind of exclusivity do they want? It's the way in which an image can live over and over and over again and bring you revenue every single time. If you don't own the rights to those images, you have no archive. And I've literally had people say to me, Milner, you're an arrogant jerk for even talking about an archive. Now, I can agree with that front part, the arrogant jerk part. Yeah, probably. I've been called that before. But they don't understand that getting an image on Facebook is going to have zero value 38 seconds after it goes on there. You've got to have the rights to those images in perpetuity so that you can then license that work. And hopefully you're making work that's dynamic, timeless, and relevant so that you can relicense it over time. This is fun, people. This is the kind of the best way of doing things. So point number 2 is make sure that you are creating an archive of images. And yes, you are probably going to spend a lot of money keeping an archive over the next 20, 30, 40 years, especially a digital archive. Archiving is the white elephant in the room in professional photography. How do I know that? Because I used to love going to trade shows and asking people about archiving and getting a cold shoulder and doors slammed in my face and people telling me not to worry about it because no one has a really great solution for this, even today. And the ones who tell you it's easy that they have a solution, they are lying or they're trying to sell you something. Point number 3. If you have to say you're edgy and authentic, you can guarantee that you are not. You are neither of those things. People who are edgy and people who are authentic never say it. They don't have to. You know why? Because you take one look at their work and you go, that's the best thing I've ever seen. And that is rare. That's why every generation, there's maybe a handful of people worldwide in the photographic space who come and bring something new to the table. Everyone else is derivative, and that's fine. I am 100% derivative of, I can name dozens of photographers that came before me who did what I do better than what I do. They were more successful. They were able to create more work. Their work was better than mine. I was derivative. Now, I wasn't purposely derivative. In college, I had someone come to me and say, I did like a portfolio review or something, and the guy said to me, your work reminds me of so-and-so, who had kind of been a hero of mine. I'd read an article about him in the News Photographer magazine at the stacks at UT Austin. I used to go in and pore over all the French photo mags and all the European photo mags and News Photographer. By the way, the French photo was so much better than American photo. It's a whole nother story. And he said to me, your work looks like so-and-so. And I remembered reading an article about that photographer, and I was mortified because I thought, did I subconsciously copy what this guy's doing? And luckily our subject matters were very different, but maybe our composition and our combination of ingredients were similar. But it bothered me. If you're claiming to be edgy and authentic and you're using that as a marketing tool, it probably means that you're just a tool and you're not actually a really good photographer. I know, ouch, that one stung a little bit. That was like a bee sting. Put some meat tenderizer on that baby. Okay, number 4. I'm going to take a line from maybe the single greatest cinematic achievement in motion picture history, the original Red Dawn. Quote, all that hate's going to burn you up, kid. Pan to see Thomas Howell, and then he says, keeps me warm. So, if you haven't seen that movie, you're missing out. Wolverines, baby. Filmed in New Mexico, I think, in Colorado. What was my point? Oh, all that hate's going to burn you up. Americans, on average, spend 11 hours a day on digital media. Think about that. 11 hours a day average on digital media. I am consistently running into photographers who hate everything. They use it as a bragging right. They will say in public, I hate my own work. I hate your work. I hate your project. I hate everything. I hate the photo industry. I hate the sunshine. I hate love and puppies and baby ducks. I hate all of that. Hating everything comes from too much online time. You no longer have your own thoughts. Your thoughts have been permeated, infiltrated by the enemy, which is digital media, basically. Digital media is designed to keep you agitated. Agitated people spend more money. They buy more material possessions. They are more dependent on big corporations and big technology. You are being played. If you hate everything, if you're one of the 20% of the photo community who now hates everything, you are being played by digital media. You're being played by an algorithm that is telling you to hate. It's boring and it sucks. And stop doing it, because when you get labeled as a hater, you are going to be like toxic. You're going to be like toxic waste dumped in an arroyo somewhere. Everyone is going to quietly get away from you because nobody wants to be around someone who hates everything. It's not good. Reaching out and paying a compliment to someone who did something well or tried something, or even, get this, this is dangerous, I know, this could get me labeled maybe as a subversivo. Someone who falls flat on their face. You reach out and you go, you know what, man, or ma'am, you tried. You know what? You tried, you failed. Who cares? Get up, do it again. Like, support people. Don't hate everything. It's annoying. I see this every single day now. And I'm online as little as humanly possible. And I still see it. Okay, point number 5. Let's just take this up a notch into the positivity column before I run out of things to say. The single most important, this is point number 5. I made some notes. The single most important thing you can do as a photographer is make original work. Otherwise, you are a commodity. That's it. You don't learn to be original on Instagram. Instagram is about conformity. God, these notes are good. Who wrote these? If you get slammed or hear nothing about your work, you might be onto something. Like most movie reviews, when the reviewers hate a movie, I love it. Smokey and the Bandit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They hated all of them. I loved all of them. Making original work is the key. Here's why. If you can make something that I can't, that has value. If your work looks like my work, we're now in a bidding war. Clients often don't know what good photography is. They're looking for content. And when it comes to content, it's a commodity and they will look for the lowest common denominator. That's why so much of what you see is garbage. There is a company that got some ungodly amount of funding in their latest round, their VC funding. They got hundreds of millions of dollars and they have the worst marketing department I've ever seen. They have the worst marketing materials I've ever seen. They don't seemingly have anyone in the company who actually knows what good is, what actual photography is, something that you look at and you can immediately identify the artist based on what the work looks like. That's photography. Photography are those few images that sear themselves into your brain that you can never forget. Content is the work that passes our eyes all day long every day that never connects with our brain. That's what most people want. If you're looking to dabble in photography for a year and a half or 2 years, maybe even get hot and popular, maybe some one little thing that you do goes viral and you have your moment in the sun, then none of this applies. But if you're looking to create a career, let's say a 40-year career in photography, your singular goal should be to determine how it is to make unique work. Because if no one else can do it, that means that client has to come to you, which means you have leverage and bargaining power for what your rates are going to be. You're welcome. Number 6. Ooh, this one's going to hurt a little bit. And there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going like this. Yeah, that was a little too close to home. Most of the happiest photographers I know are not working full-time as photographers. There are exceptions to this rule. I do know plenty of photographers out there who are still having good lives and they've been doing this for a long, long time. Most of these people have been working as photographers 20 years, 30 years. They've got an infrastructure. Even during COVID, you know, they took a big dip. I think people were down 50 to 75%, but they had health insurance. They had a nest egg put aside for times like this, and they had clients who did not abandon them. Those folks are still out there and they're doing okay. I also know a very tiny percentage at the very top of the industry who are still making incredible amounts of money. They're now sort of wearing multiple hats. They're not just still photographers anymore. They're producing, they're doing motion, they're doing stills. They're sort of much more well-rounded. And then there's everybody else. And I think what's dangerous is looking at photography in the online community and everyone's like rainbows and unicorns. My life is amazing. I'm so blessed. This is wild. But then you see them in private and they're miserable and they're trying to find ways out of the industry. The other interesting thing is you'll have a photographer that will behave a certain way on a certain social media channel, but then on another social media channel where they don't have as much traction, they will vent about how awful the industry is. Twitter is a graveyard for photographers. They might have success on Instagram, they might have success on YouTube, but you follow them on Twitter and they're like, this sucks, the clients haven't paid, I can't get jobs, I want out of this. It's rough out there. even without COVID, I think it's become more and more difficult to make it as a photographer and really just to make it as a creative. And that sucks because, in my opinion, creatives have a very unique responsibility in society. We are a serious contributor to the GDP. In every country in the world, creatives contribute to the GDP, but we never get credit. As a creative, we are given creative license to live our lives in a different way. We can do things and say things outside the norms because we are given liberty and license because we are artists. We're considered artists by the general population. I never considered myself an artist. I still don't. But a lot of people that I've run into in the field, that's what they equated me with. And so we have to take responsibility for that without abusing it. And you don't want to be miserable in real life. Let me go back to my notes. Twitter's a graveyard. That was a good point, I think. I really liked that. Yeah, okay. Point number 7. Soul over cinema. One word you will see being tossed around all the time is cinematic. I've heard it about stills, and I've certainly heard it about motion content. How do you produce cinematic content? Well, it's not that difficult, number one. And number two, nobody cares. The only people who care about cinematic anything are other photographers and filmmakers. What is more important than cinematic is soul, is learning, one, how to tell a story, and number two, having something to say, a point of view. My wife used to work for one of the major camera companies. When that camera company developed a still camera that also had motion capability, it really changed the entire photography and filmmaking worlds. I think we can all determine what camera and what brand that was. Suddenly she was on the panels and on the boards of movie festivals where they would send us all the films at a festival, and she was supposed to watch all of them and we were supposed to judge them. And we did. We did our best to get through them. There were people who were putting in time and efforts to make these films. We wanted to respect their process and their work and really watch through all of these things and really give our best judgment in terms of what was good, what was not so good. The second that camera arrived on the market, the quality of the films cinematically went sky high. The quality of the films in terms of story, narrative, script, telling an actual story, finding an interesting subject fell off the scale. There were often times where we could not get through the first 10 or 15 minutes of a film because, yes, shallow depth of field, full frame, cinematic, all the post-production you can possibly imagine, and absolutely no story whatsoever. It was horrific, and we actually felt bad because we, again, wanted to defer to the filmmaker and say, look, we know that you put all this time and effort in. We want to give this a fair shake, but there is nothing here. There is nothing of substance. Yes, you've got amazing drone footage, and you've got, super shallow 35 millimeter on a, whatever, gimbal cinematic stuff of a music festival on the beach in Thailand, and there is absolutely nothing going on here. So, soul over cinema. Learn to tell a story, learn to write a script, learn to record audio. Those are the backbones in my feeble opinion. Okay, number 8. I probably went over half of these in the first one, and I'm so overloaded that I probably can't remember. But anyway, I'm going to do it anyway. Speak when you have something to say. Nobody wants to hear from you every day, even if they tell you they do. So I've been to plenty of photography industry events, and what happens now at events is that the powers that be, they're trying to funnel everyone into the same funnel. You will hear things like, everyone in this room needs an Instagram account. Everyone in here needs to be on Facebook. Everyone in here needs to do the same thing. Now, my response to that is idiotic and lazy. That is someone who doesn't want everybody to be in different funnels because then it's more work for them. They want all of us to be in the same little funnel so they can sit in production meetings with 2 phones flipping through Instagram like robots, looking at metrics, trying to figure out what metrics fits their metrics, and then you're back to college algebra, which I got a D- in. I got a D in college algebra. I think I mentioned this before, but I'm going to say it again. It's important. I had college algebra, 8 a.m., Monday, Wednesday, Friday, in a basement room with no windows with an instructor who smoked cigars in class. So imagine a windowless room, guy smoking cigars. I am mathematically illiterate. He gave me a mercy grade. He kind of was like, look, I don't like you and I don't want to see you back, and you don't like me and you don't want to see me again. So I'm going to give you a D- and pass you, and that's it. That's my college algebra experience. you go to festivals, they try to funnel you into the same idiotic spheres that everyone else is in, and everyone has to do the same thing. My response was, look, we're supposed to be creative. We should be the most original people, most interesting, most risk-taking people on the planet, and yet here we are all standing in line at the cafeteria, the digital cafeteria that editors and art buyers and people, lazy people who have tried to funnel everybody into the same thing. It drives me crazy. No one on earth wants to know what you had for lunch. No one on earth wants to know something about you every single day, all day long. I have seen photographers do this. Post, 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 post. And behind the scenes, the industry labels them as the Facebook guy or the Instagram guy. They're talking behind their back saying, oh my God, how pathetic is it? This guy's on these networks all day long, every day. These same people in public will tell that photographer to do the same thing. But nobody cares, nobody can keep up. Everybody's living a busy life. Again, Americans average 11 hours a day on digital media. That's terrifying. We don't care. Wait until you have something to say. So I'll give you an analogy back in the day. Really famous documentary photographer, arguably the best documentary photographer of the modern era, tended to work in 10-year increments. He would get assignments, he would get a project in his head, he would do a 10-year project, traveling all over the world. That project would end up in a book, it would end up as a traveling show at museums, it would end up as a public art installation. He was sort of at a level on his own, by himself. He wasn't all day long. If that guy had been all day long, I would never have been interested in him. He would have been annoying. It would have been that bee that stung me on the face when I tried to photograph a beekeeper. It's annoying and no one wants it around. When he said something over that 10-year time frame, I would stop what I was doing and I would pay 100% undivided attention, because I knew if he was finally saying something or finally showing something, it had been shot to the best of his ability, edited to the best of his ability, sequenced to the best of his ability, printed to the best of his ability, and displayed to the best of his ability. That was called craft. That has been thrown out with the bathwater now in the race to become relevant. And it's embarrassing and annoying. So just relax. Just take a deep breath. I don't need to know, what is today, Thursday? I don't need to know what you're doing today. I really don't. Okay. Number 9, this is a good one. I like this one because it uses two phrases that I think are absolutely sum up what I said earlier about the 20% of the haters. We now have terms. Number 1 is doom scrolling, and number 2 is hate reading. This is now part of our vernacular, of our vocabulary, of our social fabric, is that we have people online who are doom scrolling and hate reading. I think this ties back to the fourth point, which is all that hate's going to burn you up. If you are doing either of these things, doom scrolling and hate reading is fascinating to me in some morbid way, where you would purposely do this, read something that either instills hate in you or allows you to hate something else. If this isn't a warning sign, a giant red flag on the horizon that we're now doing this, I think we are more lost than I thought we were. And we have GPS and we're still lost. But life is too short for this, folks. It's too short. Read a book. Just read a paper book. That's all it takes to solve all of this. Turn your phone off, leave it in another room. Don't sleep with it in the same room. Don't turn it on first thing in the morning. Just read a book. You will physically reshape the physicality of your brain to ingest long-form material. It will allow you to get back to, like, say, 1980s. By the way, 1980s, my big move in the 1980s. This was my big social move. And it took me a long time to come to this, and I'm not ashamed of it because it didn't work. And it was really a bad decision, but I owned it, which was Izod shirt with the collar up, white Avia high tops, which were not like stylish and streamlined high tops. They were like the high tops that your grandfather would wear at a retirement center. The giant white high tops and parachute pants. And not skin-tight parachute pants like my friend Bobby wore. My friend Bobby was a chick magnet, and Bobby had skin-tight parachute pants, and he was a drummer. I had no musical ability. I had my Izod shirt, my white Avia high tops, and I had baggy parachute pants, which is not what you want. They actually look like a parachute if they're baggy. That was my big move in the 80s, and it didn't work. It was actually repellent for the opposite sex. It was my response. But reading a book will bring you back. It literally will physically alter your brain if you do it long enough, and you will reprogram yourself away from things like doom scrolling, hate reading, and hating everything. So that was number 9. Number 10, this is a good one. I came to this on a bike ride. Act free. You've got to act free. Free. Yes, there's an industry. Yes, you have demands. I'm in a job. I work for a company. The company puts what I would say are parameters on me. They put boundaries on me, bumpers on me. That comes in the form of to-do list. That comes in the form of meetings, Zoom meetings, calls. That comes in the form of marketing campaigns. That comes, all of these work to sort of contain you as an individual. As a photographer, I think of the underlying theme that you can never lose is the fact that you are free in some way, shape, or form. If you are allowing the industry and your clients to entirely dictate who you are, I don't think you can maintain a level of happiness in the industry. And I'm saying that after watching tons and tons of people go through this. And in 1997, I'd graduated from school in 92. In 97, I looked at my portfolio and I said, I'm getting work, I'm getting assignments, people like this portfolio, it's effective, and there's not a single picture in it that's mine. These are all images that were made for other people under their parameters, and they suck, and they're soulless and lifeless, and I can't stand it, and I can't say this publicly, but that's how I feel internally, and I'm not happy, and it's crushing my love of photography itself. So I quit, and I took a job with Kodak in 1997, Kodak Professional. I worked as a liaison between the company and the professional industry. I traveled all over the world. I was in every major West Coast studio, or many of the West Coast studios, and working with every genre of photography. And I sold all of my equipment except for a Leica, an M6, and a 35mm. And for 4.5 years, I just did my own projects on the side. And I rekindled my love affair with photography. And I finally determined who I was as a photographer, which I never would have discovered had I remained working as a photographer. It just wasn't possible because the industry had so many parameters and funnels and restrictions and fickleness that, you know, something would become cross-processing, celebrity portraiture became hot, and that's all they wanted. And 6 weeks later, that's the last thing they wanted. So I needed to act free. Quitting photography provided me the freedom to rekindle the entire thing. If I had not quit in 1997, I would not be sitting in front of you right now. So I made some other sub-notes on this point. Let's just move on. We're almost at 30 minutes. No one's going to listen this far anyway. And the last point, there's a bit of humor in this one, is no matter what stage you are in your career, no matter how successful you are, take workshops. Continue to learn. Take workshops. Doesn't have to be a photo workshop per se. Can be a creative workshop. Can be any kind of workshop, a woodworking workshop. Continue to learn. If you stop learning, and this drives me nuts because here in America, if you get out of high school, you get a high school degree, or oftentimes, if you're lucky enough, you get to go to a 4-year school or a community college, and you get out and you get into a career, and everybody just takes the learning and just goes and stops. And I think we're selling ourselves short. There's so much in life to learn. So taking workshops. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, through my job, I get associated with an organization out of New York City that is a creative director. It's a creative industry organization of the highest level. The highest level. This was probably the single most put together organization I've encountered in my 10.5 years at Blurb. The head art director had flown to our office in San Francisco. He went into a meeting with myself, the CEO, and our international director, and he handed us all a book, and each of the books had been personally designed for us individually. So when I opened my book, it had my name in it, and it had all this stuff that directly related to me. I've never had that happen before or since, and I was completely stunned. Well, anyway, this group has an annual get-together, had an annual get-together pre-COVID. So I get invited to this thing, And I go to this event. I have no idea what to expect other than I'm the blurb guy and I'm going to be there probably as a liaison and people are going to be asking me questions. Maybe I teach a workshop. Maybe I give a talk. I don't know. I just go. I've been to many festivals like this. At least I thought so. So the first day we get into this room and I realize when I get here that the level of attendee is higher than any festival I've ever been to in my life. There is no lightweight people in the room. I'm the lightweight person. I'm the one who doesn't belong. I'm the one that's not qualified. We get into a room. There's probably 100 people packed into this conference room at a very trendy hotel. And there's a little stage and people get up on the stage and they start talking. I'm going to stop it and start it. Did I leave you hanging? Were you like, God, where's he going with this story? Hang on, I got to check something because none of my calendars work and I want to make sure I'm not meeting. I've got a meeting with an outside company I've got to talk to this morning. So anyway, I go to this thing, 100 people packed in a conference room. And these people get up, 2 people on stage, and they go, okay, here's a set of, we're handing out packets of materials. And each person is going to need scissors and glue and take this propaganda material that we're giving to you, and you're going to create an anti-communism campaign through cutting these things together, and then you're going to write an anti-communism song, and then you're going to get up in front of the crowd and sing it. Now, my first thought was not about communism, not about art materials or crafting anything. My first thought was, how the hell do I get out of this room? Because there is no way I can do anything you just asked me to do. I don't really have artistic ability, and I'm certainly not going to write a song and get up in front of the group and sing it. So I started looking for a way out of the room, and the guy on the stage knew me right away. And he looked around and kind of used me as a scapegoat and said, and if you're thinking of getting out of the room, that's not going to happen either. So now I was terrified. I started sweating. I had like pit sweat, raging. It was like a water park, Schlitterbahn in Texas. I was like, I'm doomed. And the guy next to me, of course, is like this unbelievable artist. And he takes this packet of materials and creates this like 3D poster, anti-communism poster, then writes a song that they'd play on the radio. And so now it was even worse. At that point, my only hope was that somehow they had enough people before me. If I could hide, then I wouldn't get called on. And that's what happened. I got out of it. Like I didn't have to get up on stage. I made my feeble poster and I wrote some crappy thing and I was mortified that I was going to have to sing it. But it absolutely terrified me. So for the rest of that afternoon, I was haunted. And I was like, man, you know, I'm just not very good. I'm not very good. Yeah, my photography might be okay, but nothing else is. I have no other skill set. These people are completely and utterly well-rounded. They are 5-tool players that were, and these people were not intimidated by the assignment. They were thrilled. And I was mortified. And I said, you know what? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not well-rounded enough. I have got to improve. And that came from a forced workshop. That is a lesson I wish I would have known 25 years ago, because I would be a different person today. I would hopefully be better than I am today. And I hope that you can too, because I think there's so much more to learn. I think photography is a really important part, small part of a much broader, much more important conversation. You should make the best imagery you can, and if photography is your thing, then do it to the best of your ability. But realize the bulk of the people in the world do not care about photography. However, they may care about the story that encompasses and surrounds your photography. That is the conversation, in my humble opinion. That's it, my friends. I'm all out of notes and I've got a call and it's getting warm in the van and I have another busy day and I just had some smoothie with some beet powder and now I'm like worked up. So I hope that was helpful. Again, no one asked for this, but it's advice I wish I had. These are all mistakes I've made. The police tape, the terrifying workshop. Don't do what I do. Don't do what I did. Maybe consider some of the things I'm saying and maybe have a think. Just have a quick think and maybe, I don't know, just experiment with something. Be the best person you can. I hope that was helpful. And unfortunately for all of you, I will be back with more antiviral content.